welcome to my channel. Teresa here from Teresa's Crafty Cabana. I had this really cute flamingo die and I wanted to make a background using this die and also kind of like a template or stencil, but I am making it out of cardstock. So I'm just rolling that through on my cardstock and I'm going to put it in a design that I like. Plus I'm going to save the flamingos that I cut out to use as additional stencils as I'm going to be making my Gelli Prints. Now I wanted to have some of the flamingos facing each other. So to do that I just flipped my paper and then took my die cut and put it on next to the flamingo I wanted to cut it out next to. You can see it was moving on me, so I just grabbed a piece of washi tape and just secured it where I wanted it to stay. Because again, this is going to be like a stencil that I'm creating out of this cardstock. And it's just Nina white 110 pound cardstock. So using this same technique, flipping my page for the flamingos that I want facing the opposite way, I just created my entire background and then I set aside all of those cut out flamingos to use later. Now I'm using a stencil called Forest Floor by Darcy Sanders, and you can find this on the PM Artist Studio website. I'll link it in my description. I absolutely love this stencil and I'm finding so many uses for it. Today I'm going to use some Ranger alcohol inks and I picked out colors that looked like flamingos. I had some orange, pinks, a couple of different pinks, one that's called Flamingo, and then a red color. And I also pulled out a gold alloy, it's Gilded, and that one is going to be one of the metallics, and you need to use blending solution when you use metallics. But with the alcohol inks, you can use 91% or some percentage of regular alcohol to get them to move. Of course, you could always skip that as well. So I decided to use my stencil as a resist, I guess, so that the stencil is made out of Yupo and it sticks to the jelly plate, the clean jelly plate, and then I'm just dropping my alcohol inks over the top. Now some of this alcohol ink may bleed through the stencil because I am putting a lot of color and blending solution down, but mostly it will keep the design even if it bleeds through a little bit. I'm just going to use all of my colors and I'm not using them in any particular order. I'm just kind of dropping where it needs color and I can still see the plate. And then I'll take my blower tool and I'll just start blowing around the colors to get them to move a little bit better, because again, these are all the alcohol inks. I have a sprayer, it's just a mini mister with some 91% alcohol in it. So I'm just going to spritz some of that down. Again, just trying to get those colors to move in between where the jelly plate is. Right now it's just kind of sitting on top of the stencil. Alcohol inks are interesting to work with. I always find something new with them every time I work with them. I discover something maybe I didn't know, and in this session, I did discover something very interesting, so I'll show you what it is I learned as I go through this technique. So you can see I'm just adding color, adding some solution or spray, 91% alcohol, and then just blowing it out until I'm happy with the coverage. You can see it's very wet on the stencil and on the jelly plate. Then I have this little feathers, and this is just an embossing folder that I embossed out of the same kind of cardstock as the flamingos. And I'm just pressing that down to remove some of that texture. Then I'll just, after the gel plate dried just a little, not all the way, I removed the stencil and I set that aside to dry. Then I was going to go in and kind of just remove some of this ink that was sitting on the top of this gel plate or the stencil. And I have this tissue paper. This is just regular tissue paper. So I sprayed it with some alcohol and then I used the bottom of my mister so my fingers didn't get all inky, and I just set it on there and started removing some of that leftover alcohol ink. But here's what I started noticing. All that blue around the edge, that's actually acrylic paint. So that's golden fluid acrylic paint that had been on my stencil. And as I was removing this first layer here, I realized that paint was coming up with the alcohol ink. So and you can see how dark the color is on my stencil. So this is what the tissue paper looks like, pulling the alcohol inks off. And so I wanted to try it again. So I sprayed, this is just showing you with the white in the background what those colors look like. So I sprayed it with the alcohol again. And then I wanted to try it with different paper. So instead of the tissue paper, I tried a couple of different papers, the copy paper and the cardstock. So this one is copy paper. And again, just pressing in with the back of my mister. I'll end up getting some on my hands, but that's okay. Alcohol inks can come out with hand sanitizer pretty easily if you do get it on your hands and you want to remove it. But here you can see that blue is removing, but also you see there's other colors that were left over on my stencil that are pulling up with just spraying alcohol on it. Now I did spritz this just to see if that alcohol would move at all to fill in the white space. It did just a little, but not too much. So that was another print that I got from this stencil layer, and then I did it again. And again, I'm just trying to see, number one, how many prints can I get just from spraying on my stencil? And also, does that end up cleaning my stencil? Anywhere that I didn't put enough spray of the alcohol, it doesn't lift up. So each time I'm doing it, I tried to spray where I forgot to spray on the last print. So for this one is cardstock. It's a little bit thicker. I didn't spray as heavy in the middle, and so you can see the color didn't come up in the middle as well. But look at how much color is coming up from, these are mostly from my acrylic paints that have been dried on this stencil. So I'm going to do one more. I already sprayed it. This is copy paper again. It's really fun to watch the design to start forming as you put the paper over it. And you can see this looks really dreamy. I like how the colors are a little bit shiny too. And it just has a lot of interest to these. Thought these were really cool. So next I took my gel plate that was now dried and I put some of my shimmer paints. There's a bronze and I have a coral color. These are metallics. Metallics are great to use with your alcohol inks because alcohol inks are transparent. So you'll still see the shine behind the alcohol ink, which is really cool. I'm just being extra careful around my edges, trying to press those in. Those are always the areas that I miss picking up paint. I did let that dry a little bit before I removed the print. And you can see it came out really nice. So it's got mostly the pinks and the orange on this one, and then the gold or metallic paints in the background look really nice. So for my next one, I'm going to just spray the jelly plate with some alcohol. This is the 91% alcohol. And then I'll drop in my colors again. These are my pink and red and orange colors. And now I'm going to use my brayer to get those colors to move, and they blend a little bit as well. To get a little texture, I'm using those feathers again. It's almost using it as a stamp. So I have some of the pink from the bottom transferring to the top, and same, I have the top transferring to the bottom. Then I put a little bit of this texture that's just from the bag of oranges. And then I've got my same metallic paints that I'm going to put on the background. I did wait for those alcohol inks to dry completely before I put the acrylic paint down. Now I have all my little die cut flamingos, and I'm going to layer them, or just lay them down to create a little design for my background here. You do have to work a little bit quickly with this technique because you don't want that paint drying before you have a chance to press them in. I think this working time was okay, but the metallics do tend to dry pretty quickly. So I'm just using a piece of copy paper to press in and get between each of those little flamingo legs and their little bodies. And then I have this really cool design. So I thought this looked really nice. And you can see where the pink feathers kind of left impression on the top. It's not as noticeable with the orange on the bottom, but you can still see there's a little bit of a design there. Next, I removed the flamingos that were left on the plate, and these all had nice color to them now, so I can use those in my project. So I'll set all of those flamingos aside to continue drying, and I'll use those later. And then I'm going to use these other metallic paints that I have. There's a kind of like an aqua blue and just a nice pink color. I use these colors because I felt like if I were to use the pink and the bronze again, those flamingos would just get lost because it was just an outline of the flamingos. Using more of the feathers. I'm not pressing hard because I didn't want to remove the layer of the flamingos, just the top layer where the paint was. This is copy paper again. I let that dry completely before removing. And here you can see the outline of the flamingos that are kind of like in the pink-orange color. They do blend in that pink color, but they still stand out when you change the lighting or the tilt the paper. So I'm going to do another one, going back with the pinks and the reds and oranges for this one. And this time I'm going to add some of the gold alloy. I'm putting down the blending solution. Just going to mix those out just a little bit before I add the gold. Then I'll drop that in and just kind of blend it out. I like adding a little more of that blending solution to really get the gold to move around. And while this is all still wet, I am putting my stencil that I had made with the flamingos just right over the top. And remember, this is cardstock. And then I'm putting a piece of copy paper over the top to really press in and take the flamingo pieces over the jelly plate and transferring it onto this page. The cool thing about working with the alcohol inks is you can see where the ink is coming through and where it's not coming through. And when you pull your paper back and if you see shiny still on the plate, you can put it right back down and remove the paint or the alcohol ink some more. And you can see a little bit of that gold pulled up as well. But also the gold remains on the plate. So between those flamingos, you can see the gold is still there. So I thought this was really pretty. And although I created this with the intention of making it a stencil, I decided I liked the colors on this so much, I was going to use this in a project just as is or decorate it a little bit, but I didn't want to keep using it as a stencil because then I would ruin that nice pretty pink color on there. I thought my prints needed a little variation with this project that I'm going to be making, so I put some blues down just to get a little bit of pop from the pinks and the oranges. Again, using the packaging from the oranges. Now the one thing to keep in mind is that the alcohol inks, because they are transparent, if you use a dark color to pull alcohol inks, besides the gold, the color will mix with the background color, so they won't stand out. It will more like blend or turn a different color. So for these, they turned purple because pink and blue make purple. But you can still see them. And if I layer this nice pink flamingo stencil on top of it, you can see that those flamingos really pop out. They almost look like water. So I think it looks really cool. That's just one idea that I could use this for. Next, I'm going to do another one, and kind of with the same theme of bringing in some different colors for backgrounds. I'm going to go with the greens for this one. This color is patina, so it's kind of like a bluish green. And then I've got this is a sparkly green, and then I also have a citrus regular alcohol ink. And I'll just spread those out on my plate again, just like I've been doing. And for this one, I'm going to bring back in the forest floor stencil and then create a few backgrounds with that stencil. I just love how that stencil looks, and it kind of looks like tropical leaves to me, depending on what colors you use with it. I'm using my little brayer to get these colors to blend and fill in the background. And you can see it's a little difficult to move this ink on the plate with this brayer. So I'm kind of moving it as best I can and almost making like lines. They won't remain as lines because they're just going to spread out, but I'm just trying to get that color to be kind of consistent throughout the plate. You can see how much cleaner this stencil is. It was almost black before I took all those layers off. But keep in mind, there is still some of that color left behind on that stencil. So as I'm putting this paper down, again copy paper, and pulling up the green colors, because there was pink still remaining on the stencil, I'm going to get some brown areas because the green and the red or pink make brown. This time I'll drop the alcohol inks right over the top, just like I did in the beginning. But then I'll do my best to blend those by using this little brayer again. I have another piece of copy paper. I'm going to use my larger brayer to get some even pressure. And you can see there's still browns showing up because the reds are still mixing with the greens on this one. And now I'll remove the stencil, and with what's left on the plate, it is still wet. So I took the first print that I had made, flipped it, and pulled a second layer over this print. And that fills in the background a lot more. I think this looks really cool. Gives it a really interesting look and design. It looks more 3D. That'll make a great background. I pulled out a few more blues for this background. I still have a couple of greens out as well. I'm starting with my metallic colors, a blue and a green metallic, and these are the pearls. I had blending solution to make sure that those were going to blend. If you try to use alcohol to blend pearls, they're not going to move the same as they would with the blending solution. So now that I have regular inks that I'm putting down, I can put the 91% alcohol over those, and then they will move just fine. I wanted the color all the way to the edges, so I'm using my little brayer again, and then a little bit in the center. I'm using my blower just to move those colors. Get some even coverage, putting my stencil down again. Copy paper for this one. And you can just see from the colors showing through the backside, these are going to be a lot less brown. So that pink color was starting to dissipate from the stencil. And because of those pearl powders, you can really see the design on this one. Then I'll just take it, flip it after I removed the stencil, and just put it right back down on the plate. This is just gonna, again, fill in that whole background and also give it interest. So you can see there's a lot more going on now. And then I let the pearl powders on the background remain, but I didn't pull those with a print. Before I do that, I'm going to put a little more alcohol inks down. Blower and blend with my brayer. Put the stencil down one more time. And take that one that I had just done, because those have darker colors on it now. I'm just going to press it down again, trying to get a little more interest going. Just building up the layers. So you can see how much in that has brought to the variation in this print. And so I did that for some of the other ones that were looking a little bit flat. Just trying to pull some of those blue colors in. I think it looks really cool. I was able to do one more. So the first few that I had done were very brown, again because of the green and red mixing, and so I pulled these blues over the top just to kind of tone down the brown going on. After this dried on my plate, I put white down. Whenever I use paint over alcohol inks, if the alcohol inks aren't 100% dry, it will transfer over to the paint color. So this, while this is a very white color, once I pull my print, you'll see it did blend with some of the alcohol ink colors, and it isn't a white color when I pull it. I let it dry, and you see it looks more like a yellow. But it's very pretty, and it's very muted. You can see the metallics shining through from the pearl powders on those pearl alcohol inks. And then these are the prints that I got from this session. And I am making a little book, a teeny tiny little book out of these. I'm trying to work on making things with my Gelli prints. I'm not as good at doing something with them. I always don't like ruining my Gelli prints. I like them so much I don't want to ruin them. So I tend to just want to go back and look at them. But I decided for these, the intention of making these was to turn them into something. So that's kind of why I did them themed together, and I was trying to figure out what colors I would need to create an interesting background for my book. I will share the book, how I made the little book, in the next video, but I'll just give you a little sneak peek of one of the pages that I made at the end of this video. So these are the greens and the blues. These are, again, more like the reminds me of palms or grasses. Tropical colors, though. I like them. And I think those will look really cool with the pink flamingos over the top. And you can see I can take this flamingo die cut stencil and I can just layer this over any of these, and it's going to look really cool. And then there's this one. So this is the page that I had made for my little book that's going to have the flamingos and the backgrounds. So I just wanted to show you a sneak peek of what I'm going to make with these. So that will be in my next video, showing you how I put this little book together and how I created these pages. This little piece in the middle I made as a pocket, and it comes out, and my idea was to make it so that it looked like the flamingo was popping out, which I think looks really cool because you can see the flamingo on both sides, because I used the opposite side flamingo and glued them together. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and stay tuned for the next video that has this little book that comes all together. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for being here. Happy crafting.